Coming up on This Week in Computer Hardware, a 1,000-core CPU, 2 wireless terabytes, a launch date for the AMD RX 480, Be Quiet's most excellent power supply, and say goodbye to the headphone jack. All that more coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 369, recorded on June 23rd, 2016. Bring it on, son. Daddy needs a new SSD.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by BrainTree. Mobile app development can be complex, but integrating your payments no longer has to be. With BrainTree, your business can accept nearly every type of payment from any device with just one integration. Learn more at BrainTreePayments.com/Twitch.
Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware. TWiCH Weekly Show that aims to bring you the most useful, most engaging, most incredible, most informative, and the perkiest news in PC hardware. Although I gotta say, there's one thing I'm not really perky about right now, is the availability of the 1070 and the 1080, and my desperate need to see benchmarks from AMD's Radeon 470 and 480. Because other than the limited availability or non-availability of those 4 cards, it is the perfect time to start building a gaming PC.
Yeah, if you take away the fact that you can't buy the stuff yet, then yes, it would be perfect. I actually, I did see, it's one of those things where it's unfortunate. Every once in a while, you see one available. Like last night, there was a Founders Edition from Zotac that was available for $6.99. But it's really hard to get a hold of them. And I don't really know. I still don't really have an answer as to why or who's to blame, or if demand is outstripping supply and it's a reasonable supply, or they vastly underproduced, or what. I don't know.
We wait with bated breath. If you want to pre-order by 2 to 4 weeks, usually ships in 2 to 4 weeks. You can get like a GeForce GTX 1070 Founders Edition for $449, which is a much better deal than, say, $600 if you want to buy it today.
Yes. If you have a Micro Center near you, I've heard that like the retail places where sometimes the people who are customers there aren't the ones following the latest releases, you know, the first couple of weeks they're out type of thing. You may have luck with that. But if you don't have one of those near you, or I don't know about Fry's, but I know we have a Micro Center near us, and Ken did see a 1080 Founders Edition in stock last week there. So
we don't expect the 10. It's funny. I'm looking at Newegg and everything is out of stock. And we don't expect to see the non-Founders Edition, i.e. the non-early adopter tax version of the GTX 1070 and 1080. When do we expect those to actually ship?
I think if you look, there are a couple of 1080s listed there. I think like the 1080 Strix is listed as coming soon. I don't know if that means it hasn't been for sale yet. I thought I did actually see that one for sale. But like there's a Gigabyte GTX 1070 gaming card that has a custom cooler. Again, none of these are in stock, as I say it. Zotac has their custom ones. So on the 1070 side, there's a lot of them, just none that you can purchase still.
or if you can purchase them, they're for a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, and obviously don't do that. Use a site like I think it's nowinstock.net, and you can kind of monitor. I think if you leave that browser page open, it will like beep at you when a thing is in stock. Obviously, it's not perfect, and there's lots of other people that are using tools like that to kind of snipe those deals while they exist. But you know, it's worth doing. Let's see.
According to this 970 or a 980 right now, because those prices are not dropping, and they won't until the 1070 and the 1080 are freely available.
Right.
Is that nowinstock.net we're looking at?
Yeah, nowinstock.net. So there's on the 1080 side, I found one on Newegg that is a combo. That is a GTX 1080 Founders Edition with a Razer mouse for $734. So you're paying $35 for the mouse, apparently.
Well, Not atrocious.
What's odd to me is that EVGA makes their own mice, yet this combo is a Razer mouse with an EVGA graphics card. I don't really have an answer to that. Yeah, and there's an MSI GTX 1080 Founders Edition in stock as well. And again, that's all on nowinstock.net. Look for the bright green logos there. That's what you're looking for. So if you're willing to pay $699, which sure, if you don't want to wait for the other cards to kind of become available, then there's a couple of options. Yeah. And it looks like on the Nvidia, well, maybe I clicked that wrong. On the Nvidia store, you might be able to get the GTX 1070 Founders Edition there. Maybe.
Whatever you do, don't go into the Lego section of nowinstock.net.
Oh, that's a thing?
That's a thing.
Well, that's not good. That's a bad idea.
Monster High, Ever After High, Lego. Oh, there's a Star Wars section. We were talking about hardware because this is technically a show about hardware. We talked about that 750 gigabytes Crucial hard drive last week for $200, which is a fantastic deal. And this week, Mr. Balventano has the Western Digital My Passport Wireless Pro 2 terabyte review. And it looks different from the previous wireless drives from Western Digital. It looks more square.
It is. It's a little bit bigger. It has some new features. It adds 802.11ac support. It has an integrated, the battery is larger inside. It will actually charge your other devices. Like if you hook your phone up to it, it will charge your external, or it will charge your phones as it or an external battery. 24 watt hour battery, so it's a pretty good size battery on it. It has USB 3 on it. I think the other one did too. They've made some subtle changes that were all from feedback on people. So it has Plex Media Server capability, right? So it's not you can actually serve from it. It doesn't do transcoding as far as we can tell. So it's kind of just got to serve, whatever the native files are. So depending on what your client is, that could be a drawback. The main idea of this device is it's an external hard drive, right? It's a USB 3 hard drive that also has a couple of other little perks. It has an SD card reader on it that you can set up for one of two functions. When you plug it in, I guess one of three functions, you can just have it be a reader when you plug in a card. You can have it when you plug in a card, it will automatically copy all of the data from the SD card to the hard drive. Or you can have it move everything. Like if you fill up your SD card frequently, maybe you're a professional photographer at a wedding or something like that, you've got this in your bag and it's battery powered, so you don't have to have it hooked up to a PC. You fill up an SD card, you plug it in there, it will move all of the data off, free up your memory card, and then you can pop it back into your camera. And they did some little things like before, one of the complaints people had on the original version of this is you put your SD card in there and you really had no idea when it was done copying without like logging into the device on your phone or something like that, connecting to its hotspot. Now they have, they duplicate use of the 4 LEDs that show like the battery capacity, and it will give you an ascending collection. Yeah, those 4 lights at the top. So it will give you 25% granularity on whether or not it is done copying it, right? So when all 4 lights are lit up, that the SD card copy or move is done, you can remove the card that way. 2 terabyte and 3 terabyte models available. Seems to work pretty fast. Performance is decent. If you look at the last page, Alan talks about the where is it at here? I'm going to make sure I get these numbers right. The USB 3 performance is about 110 megs per second, which is the speed of the internal, 2.5-inch hard drive. Right. The SD card import ran at about 60 megs a second, so pretty good. Definitely faster than USB 2, but that seems to be the limit because our card we could read at other card readers at about 90 megs per second. So 60 meg was your limit on the device there. And then it also actually, this is pretty cool. If you plug your phone into the standard USB 2.0 port on the device, it will actually, and you set it up to do so, it will actually copy all the pictures off of your phone onto the hard drive as well. So that's if you're a person who worries about losing your phone or breaking your phone and you just want an easy way to have a second location for your photos. I know my wife was one of those people. She takes pictures of our daughter all the time and she basically just only uses her phone. And so if either you're backing up to the cloud or you're backing up to an external device, that's a plus. That ran at about 20 megs per second, which, depending on how many photos you have, that could take a while the first time. And then the Wi-Fi performance was fairly low as well at about 20 megs per second. It's a neat little device, and it has apps so you can access it from your Android phone, your iOS device. You can stream media from it. You can browse all the media on it. And like I said, it has the Plex server capability if that's something you're into as well, that you want to just turn it on and then leave it. If you travel or if you're out of town, you just turn it on and then you can go on your laptop, start up the Plex client and watch movies or shows or whatever you have on there to do that. And it works pretty well. It's not cheap and it's priced odd. The 2 terabyte model is $230 and the 3 terabyte model is $250. So it's only $20 more to go from the 2 terabyte to the 3 terabyte model, which seems kind of like a no-brainer to me if you're going to buy one, I guess. So
it would seem, yeah. I'm with you on the no-brainer.
I'm still not sure. Like, these types of devices have existed for a while, but they've gotten better and they're more useful. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the target audience for this is, because I wouldn't give this to somebody like my sister and say, here, back up all of your stuff to it, like your phone photos or whatever, or, pictures off your phone camera, because then you still only have one copy of your stuff on a spinning disk, right? So it's more for kind of like the professional user who's on location a lot and wants the ability to make duplicates and kind of improve their workflow, I guess.
Couldn't you also have it sync to Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive automatically?
I don't know if the integrated apps have support for that. Let's see, My Cloud. Yeah, you can add Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, Creative Cloud to that, I guess. I don't know if it will automatically update to those. But that would be a big plus. Like, that's what I would want, is I would want, I want the NAS device or the external storage device that also just kind of automatically uploads everything to a third location, right? That's what you want, right? So whether it be a Western Digital, I think My Clouds maybe do that as well. And then they try to mix in, third party or remote access into your files that way, and that line of products. This is just, it's smaller, it's portable. It's got a pretty good battery on it. Alan said he ran it full tilt, kind of reading stuff to it for about 5 hours while charging his phone on the device. It's a pretty healthy battery life. Yeah. It's a little bit on the pricey side still, I think, for a pick it up and go type consumer product, I guess, $250.
It's not. I mean, given that a standard portable 2 terabyte drive is still selling for about $100, it doesn't seem too out of line to me. But
yeah, and we're talking about 2.5-inch drives, right? So I'm trying to see like how much a 3 terabyte 2.5-inch drive even is on its own. And of course, my quick Newegg search did not help me. But I mean, if that's the specific thing you want, if that's like, oh my God, the ability to do these things, then $250 is probably within reason. But yeah, I need to look and see what the price of the hard drive itself would be, laptop internal hard drives.
Well, given that the 2 terabyte and the 3 terabyte difference is about $30, I'm going to say the hard drive is probably the least part of the expense of this.
Yes,
of this
I would
device.
agree. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. It would be nice. Yeah, it would be nice if this would. I'm kind of with you in the idea of wanting to also be able to back up to the cloud. I don't think that's integrated into the wireless devices, just in the My Cloud base stations. But we can talk to Western Digital and learn more.
Yep. It looks like actually on Newegg, on Newegg, the 2 terabyte, 2.5-inch drive from Western Digital, the minimum price is $150. And they don't even list the 3 terabyte on the site yet. So maybe that's just a very, very new product. But
there you have it. $100 for wireless connectivity and a battery does not seem unreasonable to me.
No, you're right.
So you may not be familiar with the brand, but they're huge in Europe, which is a little different from a band being huge in Japan. Lee Garbutt's got a write up on the Be Quiet Dark Power Pro 11 750 watt power supply units. If you've never heard of Be Quiet, again, they're big in Europe. They are about making quiet products, and there is a lot of excellence packed into this box. They have a huge number of power supplies, but the Power Pro 11 series are all 80 plus platinum certified, and they're modular for everything, but basically a full complement of modular cables except for the 24-pin ATX cable. 550 watt, 650 watt, 750 watt, 850 watt, 1100 watt, 1200 watt models. I was really impressed by the power testing, which, for 80 plus titanium, you need to be 90% efficient at 100% load. And, this was running in excess of 90% efficiency from, 100 watts, maybe just over 100 watts, all the way up through 750 watts. Averaging, I want to say, 28 decibels to 30 decibels up through about 563 watts, according to Lee's testing, and peaking out at 37.8 decibels at a full 750 watts. There's like 7 PCI Express connectors available with this. In case you have in case you are the person using 3 GPUs, this is your power supply series. PC Perspective Gold Award. Yeah, I mean, 20 to 100% load, 90 to 93% efficiency. That's excellent. Plus or minus 2% on voltage regulation. Power supply can control up to 4 case fans. SLI ready. Crossfire X certification from AMD. Pretty much all the cables you could ever want in terms of modularity. It's impressive. Lee notes that it's a little expensive compared to other enthusiast grade 750 watt power supply units, but it's looking to be pretty ninja. If you're looking for a little bit extra, a little bit more excellence, the modular cables on it look really nice too. If you're into modular cables.
Did you notice the fan headers?
I did not.
There are actually go to that page. You'll see four odd cables coming out of the back, and they're just fan headers. They follow the same fan speed profile as the internal fan on the power supply. So that's kind of as long as you're fine with that, that's fine. But like it's a really cool idea, because one of the things that for whatever reason, I can never seem to have enough fan headers on motherboards for all the devices you're plugging in, whether it be self-contained water coolers or actual fans or whatever. Yeah, there you go. So you can see, like, you can plug in 4 external fans in your case or on your radiator, or not on your radiator. I wouldn't put them on your radiator, but for general case airflow, that's a pretty rocking idea.
It is pretty rocking. Also rocking, but in a somewhat different way. A little bit of oops over on Newegg. Oops. Radeon RX 480 specs were published, at least for one card, and then a whole bunch of other cards were published with considerably less data. Somebody hit the go button a little early on Newegg.
Yeah, it seems that way. Because since this post was taken down, this product was taken down, but there are a lot of RX 480s listed on Newegg now, but they don't list all these specifications and details. They just kind of list what the connections are and that type of stuff. So it's interesting. This lists 8 gig, 256-bit memory bus, 8 gigs of memory. It lists a core clock of 1120, a boost clock of 1266. And then it incorrectly lists having 2,304 CUDA cores and 2,304 stream processors. Clearly, the AMD cards don't have CUDA cores. Those are kind of the Nvidia branding for that. But 2,304 stream processors is correct on that product. What they don't list, which unfortunate, is the price, because we still don't know the price of the 8 gig variants of these cards. They've announced $199 for the RX 480 for the 4 gig cards, they haven't announced what the price of the 8 gig cards is going to be. So still kind of waiting on that. But if you want to go through Newegg now and start browsing through a whole bunch of RX 480s that, by the way, all are identical because they're all reference designs at this point. You can do that. They have MSI, Gigabyte, Sapphire, XFX, VisionTech, Power Colored, ASUS. They all offer the same product. And it looks like they're all 8 gigabyte models that show up on Newegg right now too. Maybe not. It's hard to tell through product numbers, but they are there. We're getting close. Everybody, it's not a secret. June 29th is the day. That's the day the reviews are supposed to go live, and in theory, that's the day all these cards should be available and on sale. So we will see if AMD has better luck with availability, I guess. And again, you don't know if there's a whole bunch of them for sale. That either means nobody's buying them or they made a whole bunch of them, right? So we won't really know for sure for a while until we get some market share numbers and some sales numbers from some third parties. But the RX 480s are in the system. They are ready to go whenever AMD decides to be ready to go.
I think what we want to see is
oh, I've got one sitting right here in front of me too. Forgot that. We were allowed to show it. We just can't. I guess I can't take it apart. I mean, it looks like the video card that we saw in China. It is a very small PCB. You can see the PCB ends right here, and then you've got your fan. One nice advantage of that is that you get air intake through the back of the card as well as the front of the card. So that would actually help crossfire configurations, anything where cards are directly abutting. But no LED lights, which I was a little disappointed with. I don't need RGB, but like the Radeon logo here and the Radeon logo up top, they don't illuminate, and there's no like light in the fan or anything. So that might have improved appearance, I guess, somewhat. But again, they're going for low cost, $199 to $230 or $240 or whatever it is going to be for the 8 gig variant. But yeah, it's follows kind of closely in step with what they did for the Fury X and the Nano in terms of styling, but priced down. You know, this is all plastic rather than metal and stuff. So it's cheaper because it's got to be cheaper. But I still think there's a lot of people excited about this video card. So
if we're talking about, 970 level performance for $200, that's a big deal. Do we have a price point for the 470? Or is that the 4 gigabyte 480 is looking like $200?
The 4 gigabyte 480 is $200. We don't have prices in the 470 or the 460 yet that I know of. And like I said, I actually think even if the 4 gig is $200 and maybe the 8 gig is $230, I'm willing to bet they sell a lot more of the 8 gigs, because at that point, $30 more, probably doubling your frame buffer from 4 to 8, even though it's probably not necessary for the type of workloads that you're going to be running on the performance levels of this card. A bigger number is still a bigger number. So I imagine they'll probably sell more of the 8s than the 4s. But on next week's show, we'll be able to talk about it. We'll know for sure.
Excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want to see these ship. I want to see benchmark numbers, and I want to see them quickly. Wow. I gotta wait a week. 6 days.
Yeah.
AMD plans 32-core Opteron with 128 PCI Express lanes. Is this for us or is this for the servers?
Well, can it all be for us? I mean, no, it's for the servers. I mean, it's going to be, the rumor is that it's an Opteron part. And there's not really, I can think of no consumer workload that would benefit from 128 PCI Express lanes, right? This is...
Hence my question about it not being for us.
It's the matter of want versus need, right? We always come down to that. Would I take a 32-core processor for a rendering desktop? Absolutely. Even then, I don't really need 128 lanes of PCI Express. The 128 lanes of PCIe, if this is true, you're talking about, maybe multiple discrete GPUs to be attached for compute capabilities, or it will support 16 10 gigabit Ethernet connections. which is important for servers, it's important for virtualization, that type of stuff. So if you do have a bunch of GPUs in there and you need to have high bandwidth support to run virtualization and virtualize GPUs across a lot of different stuff, then that's going to be a useful thing for that. I'm very curious. Like, I don't think Intel has a 32 core like Xeon part that I know of, like a high performance Xeon part. Obviously, they have the Xeon Phi, which is kind of the old Larrabee stuff, but doesn't really count. So I'm curious. Let's see. Yeah, actually, it's Scott wrote here that the Intel Xeon E7 V4 goes up to 24 cores on Broadwell EX. So if they could get 32 out there, again, it's a higher number. But
higher numbers are important.
Yeah, 180 watt TDP apparently. So
hot chip.
I like seeing people get excited about Zen, right? Like we need that. And it's going to be available in the consumer space first. That's what AMD has said, like the enthusiast space first. And they keep making some claims about performance. And I hope they can stick the landing on it, right? It could be very compelling, and it's probably a CES 2017 product launch with availability shortly thereafter. So we still have a ways to go, but it's not that long, 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah, I'm still fixated on the 470 and 480 next week.
I understand.
Just wishing if only I'd waited a little longer on the GTX 950.
Everybody always says that.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, man. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by BrainTree. By next year, maybe even next week, there could be a whole new way to pay. It's the way it is in this fancy, highly technical world we live in. It could be the next Bitcoin, the next Apple Pay, maybe an Apple Pay Bitcoin that's proprietary. Who knows? Fortunately, you got BrainTree. BrainTree's full stack payment platform is easily adaptable to whatever the future holds, so you can adapt easily too. Accept everything from pounds to PayPal to that next big innovation from any device with just one integration. When that new payment comes out, all you'll have to do is update a few lines of code. No late nights, no complicated recoding, no banging your head against the table, no stress about staying ahead of the curve or just catching up with the curve, which is what a lot of us are trying to do. BrainTree Payments is here to help. Simple, secure payments, code you can integrate quickly. The BrainTree code supports Android, iOS, and JavaScript clients. They have SDKs in 7 languages: Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, Ruby. And I'm told by people that code that this is elegant code with clear documentation. So you're not sitting with a manual and banging around on the forums trying to figure out what they're trying to do, because they've said, here it is. Here's the documentation. Let's keep it simple. BrainTree gives you an easy way to accept multiple payment types with one integration. Integrating it into your app is as easy as inserting a few lines of code. Make life easier, people. Learn more at braintreepayments.com/Twitch. That's braintreepayments.com/TWiCH. Make payments easy. Some part of mobile development should be easy, and getting the money, or whatever we call money, next week sounds like a good place to do it. BraintreePayments.com/Twitch. We want to thank them for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
Absolutely.
Oh, goodness. Do you care about the death of the headphone jack? We started talking about this when we were looking at the Moto Z at the Lenovo events. It's pretty much been confirmed. Enough anonymous sources have appeared at enough major media outlets to basically suggest that Apple has seeded the news that there will not be a headphone jack on the iPhone 7. Neela Patel over at The Verge did a pretty good rant on that. Daring Fireball John Gruber responded back by saying, oh, people are complaining about floppies. And then somebody had a really great tweet that basically says, getting rid of the headphone jack long term is okay, and complaining about getting rid of the headphone jack short term is okay and completely normal. I'm a little nervous about M5 certification for audio devices and what that will do. I'm I'm a little concerned about what's going to happen to battery life. You know, some of the claims, some of the rumors are that they're getting rid of the DAC and the amp, which take up no space on the PCB, but they're getting rid of that to create additional space for the battery. I hope it's not to make the iPhone 7 thinner, because I think the iPhone 6 is already entirely too thin. But I'm also curious to see what they're doing with cameras on the iPhone 7. But the rumor is that there will not be a lot of major updates to the iPhone 7 platform.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know. I use headphones a lot with my iPhone.
You and I both.
It's you know, I use my earbuds to do calls, to do conference calls. I use my Bose headset to do when I'm traveling, you know, all the time. I use Bluetooth wireless some. And so I kind of consider myself using a broad spectrum of potential audio devices for this.
Right.
I don't know. They're going to, if they end up going that route, somebody's going to have to make a very clear justification for a reason to get rid of it.
Well, just like Apple gave justification for getting rid of all of the jacks on the laptops.
What was that justification?
Yeah.
So they can make it thinner, wasn't it? Oh, I get you. But like, I think I read that editorial from Nilay where he talks about like the iPhone is 6.9 millimeters. The iPod Touch is 6.4. So they already have half a millimeter. They could make the phone thinner if that was their goal, even though I think that's a dumb goal to have at this point, and still keep a 3.5 millimeter jack on there. I don't know. I loathe the idea of having to carry another cable, another adapter, another dongle, for everything. Yeah, I don't want to look like that. You know, I mean, there's like I'm working. You know, I have that Huawei MateBook in, right, and it's a fantastic tablet, but it only has one Type-C connector, just like that. So if you want to do other stuff with it, you have to do weird and unusual things to your machine. You have to carry these adapters and these devices. And I don't see the consumer benefit to that, right? Obviously the goal with the tablet was to make it thin, but even they still have they have a headphone jack on that tablet. So I don't know. I think I mean, obviously it's going to happen. And if Apple does it, then could you imagine an iPhone 7S where they put the headphone jack back on? Because I sure can't. Like, they're never going to go back if they make that change.
Samsung got rid of micro SD cards and then brought them back. But no, I don't see Apple ever doing that.
Yeah, I can't imagine Apple ever going, "Oh yeah, no, our fault, we were wrong." They would just be like, "No, you're just not smart enough yet, or we're right, you'll catch up eventually." Yeah, I don't know, and it's not like they're proposing, "Oh, we're gonna standardize this connection so that every device can use this one connection that's now digital for audio." It's oh no, we're gonna use this Lightning connection that by the way it's proprietary and we hold down and we have all these restrictions on partners and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It will improve some things. I have no doubts, but I think it will be a negative in the short term and probably for an extended period for consumers that just buy a new phone and don't realize that they can't use their devices. I don't know. How many people have cars where they plug in auxiliary cables to it or stuff like that, right? Like
either a lot more or a lot fewer. I mean, a lot of people are arguing like, oh, Bluetooth headphones are pretty good, but I don't want to have to charge Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah, exactly.
I also, it'll be interesting to see what the battery life is like. It'll be interesting to see what the battery draw is. Because I've used, the Lightning to USB adapter with external DACs. It's clumsy. It's not my favorite. I'm always nervous about, something extra sticking out of the bottom of the phone to be broken. I mean, you could argue that, well, that's what a 3.5 millimeter jack is, but now you're going to have your headphone jack on top of that extra dongle.
Right.
I don't know, or who knows? Maybe somebody's going to come up with this amazing, additional battery pack with a really badass DAC inside of it and headphone amp. But
maybe they should just put an XLR connection on the phone.
Funny,
or go to the quarter inch headphone.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
It'll be interesting to see what there's certainly going to be some kind of Beats integration. We've
oh
already
yeah,
seen 9 to 5 Mac had pictures of what is supposedly Apple earbuds with Lightning connectors. I've played around with Odyssey's signed headphones, which have the Cipher Lightning jack cable headphones. The downside of that, it's like a $60 cable. M5 certification
yeah.
for Lightning devices, tends to keep the price up. There's relatively inexpensive, like Anchor has a relatively inexpensive Lightning cable. So who knows? Maybe Monoprice or Anchor will come out, with a $20 Lightning cable with a decent headphone jack built into it. But I sense this is just being, I get that they want to eliminate all the holes. There are some theories this is going to be like, a super badass, uh, waterproof one. I've heard people speculate that they're going to put stereo speakers on the phone, which I think is kind of pointless, doing stereo on a device that's that far apart. We'll find out in September. But in the meantime, brace for impact because headphone jacks are probably going away. It'll take much longer for the less expensive devices, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything else interesting to say. Let's move on.
No, I was just like, because we could, who knows? Maybe
I
it'll
could
be
complain
awesome.
about it for a while, but it's not helping.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, obviously I'm a headphone enthusiast, and I'm far on the end of the bell curve, like because I've got 9 sets of headphones with 3.5-inch, connectors,
Yeah.
probably within 10 feet of me right now, and the idea of having to keep track of one more dongle is just irritating.
Yep.
But that's just me. So one of the things that came out with some of the early review units of the GTX 1080 is that they had been lightly overclocked from the factory instead of being at the factory settings. ASUS has responded to the complaints about this. People were pissed. You're cheating. You're cheating. What's the kind of shakedown on this one?
So this story was written based on the ASUS information. So the ASUS GTX 1080 Strix, when it ships, when you install their GPU TWiCH software, there's 3 profiles you can one button click between. It's a silent one, which is clocks down a little bit and the fans spin slower. There's the gaming mode, and there's OC mode. And the difference between the retail cards come shipped in gaming mode, which is, I believe, 1683 megahertz. The OC mode that you can one button click over to in software is 1709, which is a whopping difference of 1.5% clock speed, which probably translates into about 1% performance. We're talking about if you're 1%, you're well within margin of error of actually measuring gaming performance and variability and all that type of stuff. But what they were doing was the cards that they were sending to reviewers to test were out of the box set to the OC mode instead of the gaming mode. So you would have that 1.5% clock improvement out of the box. If ASUS sent me one and I put it in the test bed and didn't install the software, I'd be running at those speeds.
Right.
And ASUS claims, after having kind of been caught with this, that the reason they did it was to help the reviewers because they did never install the software, and that they thought that it would be more representative of what the consumers would actually do by switching it over. And clearly that's just the wrong decision to make. The right decision is to, every time you send out a card to a reviewer, have a phone call or an email and say, hey, by the way, it comes in this mode, but there's this mode. Make sure you install our software and you switch over to this mode, or if you're doing benchmarks, because we think it's more representative of the total performance of the experience that our product creates, instead of just silently under the radar changing the VBIOS. And I say in this article that, like, in reality, even just having a process in place at all that creates a different VBIOS for cards that go to reviewers than ones that go to retail sets yourself up for problems down the road, whether it be this or fan speed curves that are different, lower noise levels, or there could be all kinds of things that are potentially, uh, uh, that the manufacturers could shift, they could change to try to game the system. And so having that process is bad. Since this kind of debacle took place, ASUS has sent out retail BIOSes, VBIOSes to reviewers for the 1080s and the 1070s and said, here's how you flash it. We're not going to do this anymore, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of the initial complaining about the problem was a little bit overblown. Again, we're talking about 1% difference,
as it were.
yeah, yeah. But I understand the consumers that are like, well, if they're allowed to get away with this, why won't they just make it 2% or 3% or 4% the next time? And you could see that kind of compounding as one manufacturer tries to leapfrog over the other. But again, I don't know why you would lie and hide something for a 1% potential 1% performance advantage over your own product, right? Because you're comparing it gaming mode to OC mode. That's really what it comes down to. And there's so much variability. Like 1% is going to get lost in the wash regardless, almost all of the time anyway. So MSI also responded. They're not included in that post that I linked here, but they responded that said, yeah, we did it. Essentially the same reasoning as ASUS. As far as I know, I don't know if they sent out updated BIOSes to vendors, but now it's in place. It's a good thing that it was checked and kind of validated, but it's good that it was caught, but it's not the end of the world. Some people were talking about all the early reviews of those cards were invalid because they tested it in this overclocked mode. And I'm like, no, that's just clearly not the case.
You're not familiar with benchmarking, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
You severely overestimate the value of a 1.5% overclock.
Yes, I would. Yes, correct.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So we talked about Crucial last week, dropping a fantastic deal on a 750 gigabyte SSD. And of course, just as soon as we did that, reminded everybody that the 850 is kind of our stock choice, Samsung 850 EVO. Alan writes up, brace yourselves, Samsung SM961, PM961, 960 Pro, and 960 EVO SSDs are coming. So the SM and PM numbers, the 961 SM and the PM 961 appear to be, quotes, converging into OEM equivalents of the Samsung Pro and EVO product lines, running with MLC and the SM and TLC and the PM. Those are starting to show up in pre-order. So they've got the SM961 M.2 and 128 gigabytes through 1 terabyte. Goodness, I want that so much, but I won't be able to afford it. They're claiming a 25 to 50% gain over the 950 Pro in nearly all metrics. That's because of the 48-layer V-NAND, reading up to 3,200 megabytes per second, writing up to 1,800 megabytes per second. Random reads up to 450,000 IOPS, right up to 400,000 IOPS. Unless they get renamed, the Pro and the Evo, next-gen Pro and the Evo should be the 960. And it looks like the 48-layer part's going to show up in the 960 series, not the 950 Pro lineup. And including, Alan notes, an Evo, which would mark Samsung's first retail M.2 PCI Express 3.0 by 4-part sporting TLC flash. So that should be cheap, but offer better performance, which would be nice. This is cool. Mostly it's cool because the 48-layer V-NAND, which is dropping the latency that Alan's been testing. And, my favorite comment is probably the first one. Bring it on, son. Daddy needs a new SSD. So.
Right to the point.
Right to the point. So. I'm excited. I'm always excited. I don't know. I'm sitting here and I'm ready to buy a new SSD for one of the machines behind me right there. And now I'm circling. Fermi Kepler, Maxwell, and Pascal comparison benchmarks. This is kind of crazy. TechSpot looked at 8 GPUs across 6 high-end dies in NVIDIA's last 4 architectures. Looked at frame rates from 720p all the way up through 1440p QHD. Scott kind of sums it up on PC Per. Comparing GP 104 to GF 100, mainstream Pascal is typically on the order of 4 times faster than Big Fermi. Over that time, we've had 3 full generational leaps in fabrication technology, leading to over twice the number of transistors packed into a die that is almost half the size. It does, however, show that prices have remained relatively constant, except that the GTX 1080 is sort of priced in the X80 Ti category, despite the die placing it in the non-Ti class. And he notes that it would be interesting to see this data set compared against AMD. It's informative for an NVIDIA-only article, though. So literally 6 generations of GeForce graphics, which is awesome. 480, 580, 680, 780, 780 Ti, 980, 980 Ti, and the GTX 1080. So if you're wondering, like, can my 780 still hang? How's my 680 doing? You've got some pretty good information to look at here. 980 Ti kind of hanging with the 1080. That 780 is starting to look real long in the tooth. If you're doing 1080p, not so bad. But if you're looking at higher than 1080p resolutions or VR, man, I'm just excited at a sub $200 GPU that is supposed to be. Are they claiming the 470 and the 480, the RX 470 and 480 are VR ready, or probably just the 480 is VR ready? Because it's in the 970 category.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the 480 is the limit there. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense. Man, UC Davis went nuts.
This was an interesting little tidbit. So this was a part of a course, I guess like a graduate student project at UC Davis. They designed a processor, partnering with IBM. They got to use IBM's facilities, which is pretty awesome. They've made a 1,000-core processor on a 32 nanometer process, which is obviously it's an older process, but it was running 1.78 gigahertz. So not like, wasn't running at 25 megahertz or something like that to get that speed. And it was running at 1.7 tera ops. So it's not a floating point processor, but just integer-based stuff. So tera operations, which is pretty impressive. And I think they talked about it's only using 621 million transistors. I say only. But if you compare that to the original Big Fermi processor, the GPU had 3 billion transistors, so 5 to 6 times as many transistors. It had 1.5 teraflops. Now, obviously, floating point's a little bit more complex than integer, but a similar number of operations per second are happening between those two parts. It's pretty impressive what they did. And I think it was running at 30-something watts as well at that 1.78 gigahertz thing. And you can see a picture of it there. And, sitting on its dev board, no heatsink on it. I'm going to assume that they didn't just leave it running without a heatsink. I think if you spent all that time and you got to design this process with IBM, you'd probably be pretty damn careful with it. That's a pretty awesome graduate project to be working on that you could put on your resume, right? That, I designed a 1,000-core CPU. I would love to see, we were debating this last night, like, was it running an operating system? Was it just running test firmware internally that could, basically just built to see how many operations it could run per second? I would love to see some kind of comparison of, like, in a metric that I would understand in terms of a real world application performance or something that's applicable to a real world application. How close is this to being like a competitive part with, a few years ago processor, right? Or like an ARM processor or a phone processor or something like that. I would like to see some normalization of that data to see where it falls. Obviously,
can't you just embrace the love for a college student knocking out a 1,000-core CPU?
I'm doing that right now. Now I want to go to the next step. Like, what are you going to do with it? What was the purpose of the project? Right? Obviously, it was, okay, we can put 1,000 cores on there. What is the idea? Why would you need 1,000 cores? What is a workload that might do that? Right. So,
right.
That's a lot of parallelism for sure.
So much parallelism, so little time. Oh my goodness. The man. Yeah, I'm just gonna say at Patrick Norton or at Ryan Shrout on Twitter if you got questions for us for next week, or if you want to rage because we are not upset enough about the whole iPhone jack, or if you think we're being ridiculous about being concerned about the death of yet another ridiculous analog standard that should die. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to say PCPro.com is a place to find more Ryan Shrout. You can find me at techthing.com. And we wait until next week where we find out if AMD is about to take names and kick ass on NVIDIA's GTX lineup with the new 470 and 480. And I personally,
It's going to be an interesting week.
Man, you know, we always say wait to buy because you'll get more performance for less money. But we're talking about in the space of about 3 weeks going from, you know, GTX 970 level performance costing, you know, 300 plus to GTX 970 performance costing under $200.
Yep.
You know, and or you know, $200. I should say $230. And yeah, get the 8 gigabyte card. Spend the extra $30. Get the 8 gigabytes. You'll be that much more ready.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, this is exciting. With that, ladies and gentlemen, you can find all of our episodes at twit.tv/TWICH. That's twit.tv/Twitch. You can find information on how to subscribe all our older episodes. And thank you so much for listening or watching to This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week.